Hello, students. This is the second video lecture that I'm doing about video games. This is the new stuff, current stuff, really semi-current stuff. And about 30 seconds before I hit record, I realized that if I were actually sitting in the Millennium Falcon, um, I hope most of y'all recognize this as a reference to Star Wars. If I were actually sitting in the Millennium Falcon, I would be facing the other direction, right? I'm backwards. I'm facing the wrong direction. And if you've never seen Star Wars, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Okay, before I begin, I want to pull back. Let's pull back to sort of a macro bird's eye view. When I sat down to create this lecture, I wanted to include something, and then I thought to myself, Arsinoe, is that actually a video game or not? Which made me think that the term video game is kind of ambiguous. We can play games on many different types of devices, and there's many different types of games, including casual games, which are very simple. You might play on your phone with your thumb while you wait in line at the bank, or there's completely immersive experiences where you have a giant high definition screen, maybe you got headphones on, trash talking with people through the internet. That's a different type of experience than playing Bejeweled on your phone. And then there's different genres of games. We call them puzzle games or role-playing games or sports games. The last item here, sandbox games. These are games or things that are, maybe not even games. It's sort of like an online experience where there's no points, there's no big boss monster to fight, there's no multiple levels. It's just Minecraft is a good example of this, or that thing, The Sims, if any of you remember that. It's kind of a game. I mean, it has game-like qualities, but it's not a game in the traditional sense. So I'm going to assume something that is a sandbox like Minecraft counts as a game, although strictly it's you might want to argue with that. I did find this definition online. What is a video game? A game played by electronically manipulated images produced by a computer program on a television screen or other display screen, which is very vague and ambiguous, but I think it captures what is a video game, which would include this thing. This is the thing that made me question what the heck is a video game to begin with. Wordle is a crossword puzzle kind of game where you try and guess a particular 5-letter word. It's pretty fun, pretty addictive. It's also very social, where people will share their scores with one another to sort of indicate, how they did on that particular day, trying to best their friends, as it were. Well, the New York Times purchased Wordle in 2022. They paid a couple $1 million, maybe 10 million, something like that. Yeah, here's from the New York Times itself. Something that's in the low 7 figures. I think that means at least $10 million. Anyway, it's a lot of money. New York Times is not charging for it. They said they will not charge for it. It is a draw to get people to come to the New York Times website, and maybe when people were there, they'll sign up for a digital subscription or something. So if Wordle is in fact a video game, which I think it is, and if the New York Times owns it, which it does this mean we should be teaching game design in the School of Journalism and Media Studies? Perhaps the answer is yes. And something else I wanted to mention is this long-standing curse of video games. People have said that, movies and TV shows based on video games generally fail. There's been a lot of examples of this, including E.T., which I mentioned in the last lecture, when that was attempted as a video game for Atari 2600. It was a miserable failure. But, there's an exception to everything. And then, maybe every trend must come to an end. This year, 2023, Super Mario Brothers movies, one of the biggest movies of the year. It may not be based on a specific game, but it's certainly steeped in video game culture with references to video games. So we have Super Mario Brothers movie doing very well. And then we have this sort of sci-fi thriller show. Spoiler, it's got zombies in it. The Last of Us, very, very successful show on HBO. I'm sure they're making a second season. I'm positive of that. And it's a good show. It's a good show. So I think between The Last of Us and Super Mario Brothers movies, you could say that this video game curse, if it ever existed, is gone. Now, here's something I wanted to talk about, which I think could apply to other industries as well. These casual games are oftentimes free, which means it doesn't cost you anything to download it. You can put it on your phone for free, but then they want to hook you with what are called in-app purchases. You have to put in a credit card, or they use the stored credit card number to sell you extra levels, a new skin, a new bonus, some kind of feature. And Candy Crush is evil. It's fun, but they're going to sucker you in, make you download your wallet when you weren't expecting to with these in-app purchases. And yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of criticism online about in-app purchases, people complaining about them, especially if you have a child. You know, you give your child your device to keep the child occupied. Very common, very standard thing to do in the 21st century. Maybe you don't realize your credit card number is stored there. Boom, you get this massive bill because little Billy was playing Candy Crush, and now you have $500 to the credit card. This is the horror stories I've heard online. This is what I've heard online. Consoles, you can play games through a variety of methods. Consoles remain a very popular way. This is a dedicated piece of hardware that you purchase to play games. And historically, it was an actual thing that you had to purchase for the game. You know, there's Microsoft Xbox as a popular console, Sony PlayStation, and then the Nintendo Switch. All of these consoles are updated periodically. But these are kind of the major players when it comes to the console space. Historically, you had to actually buy something, whether it was a cartridge or a CD or something. Now we're getting into a world where everything is digital, everything exists online, and the trend has been going on for some time. This chart ends with 2018, but it shows the growth of digital sales and the decline of physical sales. When this chart concludes we're 83% digital, it's well over 90% right now. And I think just like with Candy Crush and in-app purchases, I think other industries are going this way as well, but maybe video games are further down the path than other industries. And it relates to this concept of cloud gaming. Cloud gaming, we have, you know, cloud computing and services that exist in the cloud already. We're just pushing more and more to this kind of virtual world. The idea is, as I understand it, I'm just going to say as I understand it, you could have a very, very simple device in your house without a super fast processor or super fast computer. But if you have a reliable, fast internet connection, that's a big if, you can access some other, say, supercomputer and play some fancy immersive role-playing game. You're actually playing it off of that other computer, and your little device is just like the display screen. If we move in that direction, people may not need fancy consoles at all. They could just maybe play with their iPad or maybe even with their smartphone. Related to this is this subscription idea where, again, I've already mentioned people not owning games. You'll just pay a monthly fee or maybe an annual fee to get access to what you want. I think the producers like a subscription fee because they could keep raising the subscription cost, and they could hook you in for sort of repeat purchases for, you know, indefinite years and years of your life, as it were, rather than selling you something once that you just own once. So cloud gaming is related to this. People no longer needing fancy consoles and maybe no longer needing any kind of physical artifact at all. And we have Steam. Why am I talking about this? You guys know this. You know this better than I do. Steam is a major player when it comes to online digital sales. I don't know if you call it a website, platform, store. I don't know what you call it, but it's super popular. And decisions that Steam makes and titles that they carry, or maybe titles that they don't carry, can have big effects and ramifications throughout the industry. Steam is a very, very big deal. This is a bit of a tongue twister. Microsoft's acquisition of Activision. Okay. Microsoft has been spending money for years trying to get a bigger and bigger share of the video game industry. Activision makes many, many games. Microsoft wants to, you know, make them exclusive or semi-exclusive or exclusive for a period of time. But this is all part of their sort of long-term strategy to create this sort of cloud gaming service where Microsoft is going to have the best titles. This merger is a huge merger, what, $69 billion, the headline says. It's been in the works for a long time, seems to be moving forward. And here's a headline here about video game streamers leaving Twitch. Okay. It still boggles my mind, but apparently it's true. You could make tens of thousands of dollars a month playing video games, streaming them on Twitch. That's kind of the main platform for people who live stream their games. Well, Twitch announced this rule where they want more revenue from the different video game streamers. So I put these three headlines together into one area I'm calling clawing for revenue, competition everywhere. Yeah, Twitch either did or attempted to, change the revenue split that they got. People weren't happy about that. Sony raises prices on its subscription service, the PlayStation Plus, by 30%. People weren't happy about that. And then this, someone in the class tried to explain this to me, which I kind of understood a little bit. Unity is, it's infrastructure that's not obvious to players, and many people don't even know the name Unity, but it's kind of the back-end engine that powers and designs. A lot of games are designed upon Unity. Well, Unity had a certain revenue scheme. If you use our engine and people download your game, you owe us X amount. Well, then after the fact, they changed it and they said, oh no, we want to increase it, way increase it, not by like a little bit, but like, by a magnitude of 10 or 20. And so many people freaked out, were upset, said it's going to bankrupt me. I can't pay this money. You can't change the revenue sharing agreement after the fact. So Unity actually backed off of that, backed away from that. But anyway, I put all these headlines together because I do think they reflect a larger trend of, as the video game industry gets bigger and bigger, I mean, it's multi-billion-dollar industry. It makes sense that the people who have a portion of it are fighting with one another. They want more. They want more. Everyone wants to maximize their revenue. And we also have something which I'm calling unrealistic expectations. This game, it's a pretty new game, Baldur's Gate 3, it's based on the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. I actually remember playing this game with dice and little models and things. It's sort of that sword and sandal fantasy universe, dragons and, monsters, orcs, trolls, etc. It's set in that world, and it's a pretty popular game, very, very, very highly reviewed. But a lot of sort of glitches and problems have become apparent. So the company has to issue different patches to resolve these, which has brought up this debate of like, given how incredibly detailed and expansive and graphically intense video games are now, there's something called Starfield, which allows you to explore the universe and has just so many different possibilities of what you can do. That it's unrealistic for gamers to expect games to come out fully formed. That this idea that you have to fix a game after it's been released is normal, and maybe people should get used to that. And continuing on this theme of unrealistic expectations, the video game industry is notorious for overworking people and very exploitive, abusive working conditions. And I think this is a result. If you have very, very shortened schedules, you're rushing to meet maybe a holiday schedule or something like that. And there's people, desperate to work, willing to do anything for a paycheck, who will put up with these horrible, horrible working conditions. The headline here that I took a screenshot of talks about people sleeping in their office. I'm sure that there's many more horrible stories than people being forced to sleep in their office, but this gives you a glimpse of the notorious and exploitive nature that some video games are produced under. Okay, 2023 essential facts about the US video game industry. I grabbed this from the Entertainment Software Association. This I caught my eye. Stereotypically, if you think about gamers, you might think of most of them being men, but according to this industry group, 46% of gamers are female. This makes sense. I think stereotypes are often untrue, but it also makes sense when you factor in all the different types of games that are out there. If you include Bejeweled and Candy Crush and Wordle, as video games. And I think it makes sense that the gender breakdown is not what the stereotype might be. I think if you look specifically at action games, something like Call of Duty, I think the gender breakdown might be different. But when you're looking holistically at the industry, 46% of gamers are women. 46%. And then here we have some different players' habits, different types of behavior and different types of media consumption that are mapped up against video game usage. And here we have, this makes sense to me. 45% of players agree that video games give them the most value for their money compared to movies, TV, and music. That makes sense. I mean, if you got a game and you like it, you can play it for hours and hours and hours. Heck, I play Dig Dug all the time. I've been playing Dig Dug for a couple of years now. Even a movie I like, I'm not going to watch every day for 2 years. And I do play Dig Dug almost every day if I can. All right, top games in the US for 2022. This is from the Entertainment Software Association. When you're looking at games played on personal computers or consoles, we have Call of Duty, very popular, been popular for a long time. But when you look at mobile games, it's something different. We have Candy Crush and Roblox, and I don't even know what Coin Master is. But the top grossing mobile games here we have, which is quite distinct from the games on the left side of the screen. Some key points. In conclusion, we have video games branching out into different areas, different forms of games, including Wordle. I didn't even have time to mention location-based gaming and Pokemon Go, but there's a lot of different ways that people can deploy and utilize video games. We have the free model, which I talked about in relation to Candy Crush. I think other industries might pick up on that, give the consumers something for free, and then find some different way to get revenue out of them. We have this cloud distribution model that's growing. We're seeing that in other industries as well. I think video games are maybe a little further along that path than others. And then we have this increased competition for revenue, which is probably not going away. That's it, the end.